bike causing an internet firestorm? I don't, but I do feel like this video is going to be stepping in it a little bit. Kind of looks like an What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Make It and Break It. My name's Andrew, and beside me is our Project HyperTenere Yamaha R6 adventure bike. We recently took this on a trip to do the Wobder and a bunch of other things. And one of the things we did on that trip was test GPS units. And I wanted to kind of figure out for myself and for you guys just what makes the best kind of GPS unit for a motorcycle adventure. So I'm going to be trying to pull off this cowling here because I do want to take a look at all the internal stuff for some stuff we're working on for something later here. But while I'm doing that, I wanted to talk to you today about the various different GPS units I've tested and what I think kind of the best GPS unit is for a motorcycle adventure. I gotta go find my tools and then we'll get started. What do I even need? Allen wrench. I have no idea where those are. Alright, where's the... It's down here. Do this by feel. So, the first thing that you should be taking with you on your motorcycle trip actually doesn't have batteries. The navigation thing you want to use, I left over here. All the time, make sure you have maps. Maps don't run out of batteries. They don't get dropped in rivers and become completely unusable for the rest of their lifetime. If you have the right style water resistant maps, you can mark on them. You don't have to worry about them. You can just stash them. They fold up and get out of the way. Bring a map. Always bring a map. Don't forget your maps. Alright. I don't need this key anymore. Now, the second group of sort of things to remember to bring that can be used for navigation is what I like to call your emergency backup navigation system. So in a lot of people's cases that's a map, right? But for me it's something called an inReach Mini. The inReach Mini is a specific type of satellite communication device. It's actually specifically sold and designed for short satellite communications, and if you really need them to, some of them can help you navigate out. The Garmin, the Larn, I think, or I don't remember exactly who made them before Garmin bought them. The inReach series are all GPS enabled, and you can, through the app or through the regular Garmin inReach Explorer, actually use them as semi-functional GPS units, like a fully functional, specifically designed, like handheld regular Garmin. And why I like the Mini so much is because it's so small. It's very easy to just take off, put in my backpack where it's always going to be with me. If I come off the bike, I know I have it on me in my backpack, and I just kind of have to get to it there. And it lets me go ride with, relative comfort, knowing that I can always communicate back home with future Mrs. M&B or with the family or whatever. Just let them know that, hey, I found a campsite, or everything's going good, having lunch, and I can do that pretty much wherever I'm at. And another cool thing is those things do come geotagged, so if you keep track of them all, you can actually plot out your entire adventure and where you stopped for lunch and saw some cool stuff and everything like that. So it's kind of like a cool side benefit. Some disadvantages, or some things that don't make it a good primary GPS unit. All of the inReaches, jeez, this is hard to do. I really tighten these things down. All of the inReaches have fairly limited GPS navigation capabilities. They don't hold a ton of track data, and their screens are, well, this one's not usable. There is not a usable map screen on this thing. But they really are meant to be communication devices and worst case scenario an emergency navigation system. The other thing to keep in mind with these things is they are pretty expensive, as you kind of expect in the safety, off-roading, backwoods safety world. Safety devices like avalanche monitors and stuff that has an SOS that'll call a helicopter to you if you need to can get expensive. This little tiny thing is $350. It's actually the most expensive piece of GPS gear that I take with me when I go out and ride. And on top of that, it actually requires a subscription plan so that it will actually communicate to the inReach system and send emails and text messages and whatever else you want to do. Think of, like, those of you who are old enough, think of your cell phone plans in the early 2000s and your text message costs. That's about what these cost. They're not cheap, but they do give you a lot of peace of mind. As GPSs though, they are very limited. Please don't rely on them. Even the Garmin Explorer, I wouldn't consider a primary GPS just because of its limited track memory and ability to really be useful. Oh, come on, you bastard. Alright, so if what we're using right now, or what we're talking about right now, are backups and emergency plans, what should be your primary plan? Well, there's really two main groups of primary navigation, two main sources of primary navigation, specifically GPS navigation. And the first one is actually pretty prevalent. Come on. And that's because you carry it around all the time. It's your smartphone. So modern day smartphones, we're talking anything made really in the last, what, 6 years, 5 to 6 years, have actually very robust GPS systems, because that's how all of your apps locate you when you're doing things like Google Maps. They communicate with GPS and locate you. So your smartphone actually makes a very good GPS navigation system for your motorcycle. It already has all the built-in stuff, and everyone's going to roll around. I know there's a few of you out there that still don't believe in having smartphones, but almost everyone else rolls around with a smartphone already. So you already have the charging cables. You don't have to bring any extra stuff because you already have this on you. And if you're like me and you have helmet headsets and everything else, everything's already hooked up to kind of work with a smartphone. So it's pretty easy to do. And setting up a charging system on your bike in order to kind of take advantage of, what do I need? I need Phillips head. That's what I need. I think I have one in here. Setting up a charging system is actually very straightforward. You can just take your battery cable or something else, hook up a little USB charging port right up here, and I actually had that with me on my bike. I just never actually used it on the trip. And then you can plug in your USB to your phone, and off you go. It's pretty simple, and honestly, for dedicated GPS, this is your cheapest option. So you can use your smartphone. On this trip, I actually went and bought, a separate phones purely to do navigation duties. And this is a set of ruggedized phones that are actually pretty popular in the area. And one thing that they don't tell you, at least around here in the US, is that smartphones work. GPS works, Wi-Fi works if you don't have a SIM card. So I actually bought this phone off of Amazon for, this is a Ulefone Armor X7. can get it on Amazon for 120 bucks, shipped like next day. And it's a ruggedized phone. It's IP68, IP69, I do believe. So it's waterproof, dust proof. It's pretty hard to break when you drop it. It's got quite a big battery on it, and the battery life was good. I had it navigating all day, following the pink line, or I think it's pink on this one. And I got to like 40% off of like 10 hours, 10 to 12 hours on the bike, just navigating the entire time. So this will give you, at least to begin with, a nice, easy, full day of riding worth of navigation. It's pretty easy to charge, and you're already planning on charging your cell phone anyway, so it really doesn't ask a whole lot of you. There's a bunch of apps out there. I use the Osmand app. It's free to get, and it's free to get a certain number of maps. And if you're riding in the same area all the time, like if you're riding in Utah, or I'm riding in Washington all the time, I've downloaded the entire Washington map and the Oregon map and the Idaho map, which is the states right in this area that I ride in a bunch. And I got all of that for free, and it GPS locates me. I can put in, GPX data for tracking for for routes, for things like the Wabder or any other route I want to go. I can throw that in here, and it tracks just like a dedicated GPS unit. So there's a lot to like about a phone setup, even if you're just using a regular phone. I use this because this lets me have my regular communication phone safely in my backpack or in my tank bag, so that it's not spending its battery that I would need for communication on navigation. But you could easily do just a single one in a pinch. And it's probably the cheapest dedicated option. This whole thing was 120 bucks. As far as the actual options, this is probably your cheapest option, and it's a very good one. It's not perfect though. There are some downsides. The USB charging situation. There's a lot of talk on stuff about USB charging not being designed to be all-weather safe, and it's not really. USB is designed to be charged in a house, right? It's not designed to be an outdoor charging plug setup. Charging on the bike without maybe some specific weather protection, it's not bad, but it can run into issues. A lot of these phones aren't necessarily designed to be used with motorcycle gloves. Now, a lot of people have a work around that anyway because they like to use their regular phones, but out of the box, glove use can be an issue. Some of my gloves work on this phone and some of my gloves don't. So when I have my big, heavy winter gloves on, they don't work on this phone, but if I have my shorty, nice summer riding gloves, they work just fine on this phone. I'm not an iOS person, so those of you iPhone users out there who want to use your iPhone, there are apps that do it. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. My understanding is Android support is better, so it might be worth buying an Android phone. I don't think there's any cheap iOS phones out there, so if you want to use a cheap dedicated phone, you're pretty much stuck with Android. And then the other thing I noticed on my rides, that in some certain lighting conditions, these screens can be tough to read. They do have daylight and nighttime modes, but you aren't really able to read them in every single sort of angle. Sometimes you just have to go like this or cover it with your hand. Pretty standard stuff if you've ever used a smartphone before, but it's just something to keep in mind. If you need to do a quick look down there, you won't always be able to see the screen perfectly. Another thing to keep in mind is that while a lot of apps have a lot of free functionality, once you get past a certain number of maps, or you want to have longer tracks, or whatever, you want to be able to download and keep maps offline, every app has its specific quirks to the way they earn money. You do have to spend some amount of money, but with your low barrier of entry here at 120 bucks versus, a good GPS style unit is definitely north of $200 and pretty much any other configuration. You have plenty of room to add maps and subscriptions and everything else to this before you even approach the price of a dedicated GPS like the one we have on our handlebars over there. Start here. that leaves us to our sort of final category, and that is dedicated navigation GPS units. These have a few different styles. Some of them, in motorcycle land even so, come really designed for the street. Turn-by-turn navigation. These are like your old, your old Garmin's. On a motorcycle, the Garmin Zumo series, for instance, is definitely designed for street use, turn-by-turn navigation, although it can do off-road navigation too. I think a lot of people do use it for that. They come with big screens, and they typically get wired into your bike. Really cool units, although you do pay for what you get for them. There are also, smartphone-sized screens available. The Garmin Montana is a good example of that. They have big, bright touch screens. They're really good with gloves. Long battery life. They are also can be wired into your bike, so that you don't need to be putting USB cables in, nor do you need to really worry about the USB being like not the best watertight connection, because they have sort of designed for bad weather charging in that case. And they have kind of the most popular style for motorcycling, which is the handheld Hyper's GPS, like the one I have sitting up there on my handlebars. So what makes something like this? This is a hiking GPS. This is specifically the Garmin GPSMAP 64SX. What makes something like this really good for a motorcycle? Well, these are also very rugged. They're at least as durable as the ruggedized cell phones. They're really designed to be manhandled because these are designed as like hiking backpacks, These are designed for backpacking. These are designed for long distance off-road biking, things like that, where they're going to get tossed around. They're going to see, rain and snow and baking hot, sun. So they're designed to be a little bit more controlled at the extremes of your temperatures and weather. They're also designed, because they're designed for extremes of temperature and weather, designed to be very easy to work with gloves on. You'll notice there are actual physical buttons on this. That's very handy when you're working with heavy gloves or just gloves that don't play well with touchscreens. You can pretty much always work this as long as your fingers work, right? Most dedicated GPS units like this have several different ways of getting power. This one has a USB that's the supplemental. It has a USB plug as well as internal batteries. This one runs off a couple internal AA batteries, which means it's on the bike and I can have it charging just like a cell phone, constantly charging while the bike's running, and that will kind of keep everything all charged up and perfect. But if I don't want to do that, or I just don't want to charge stuff on my bike, like this one tends to run out of battery pretty easy, relatively speaking, then I can just leave it on batteries and then replace batteries or recharge batteries every couple days. This one probably would go 2 days of navigating via just tracks, following GPS tracks, without recharging. They also have been used for years and years and years in various versions. This one's one of the later versions of this hiking GPS version. There's also marine versions, which are designed to be used on boats, and they have different sort of connections that might be a little bit more weatherproof, and things like that. But they've been used for years and years, and so there's a whole knowledge base on how to get them to use, how to get them, the way you want them, what sort of charging and batteries work best, where to go get the best offline maps, because you can update the maps that are on these things. There's a huge knowledge base and experience base out there for them. And just the other thing is they're designed to be used kind of everywhere in the sun, so their visibility tends to be a little better. I noticed specifically that I liked looking at this better for specific directions than the smartphone in some light cases. They're not perfect though. Specifically for these hiking ones, there are GPS units that have big screens like this. They're usually turn-by-turn based, or the big Montanas, which are very expensive. The screen sizes are very different, and in fact this one's actually meant to be read this way. I suppose this one rotates however way makes more sense for the map and track that you're using. So if you have some really bad eyesight, you can need to stop to get in here and read this thing. It's not too bad. I found it pretty easy to use, especially for GPS tracks like I like to follow, where you just, all it is this purple line on a map, and you just follow the purple line on a map and off you go. But the screens are smaller, and then other than the specific ones that are really designed for turn-by-turn usage, you can't really use this in turn-by-turn. So if you're doing a lot of like city and highway, these aren't perfect for that. They're actually not very good for that, and you're overpaying for that when you have your cell phone or a specific, phone like this that could do that for much cheaper. And then the other thing is, this is a navigation tool. This is only pretty much a navigation tool. There are a couple of them, like the inReach navigation, or there's a couple GPS units that have some communication functions. But this is a map tool. This is, hey, you get some Wi-Fi, or you have a signal, you can look up food, and it's always updated because Google always updates, right? This one may or may not be updated on a regular basis. You have to update any sort of food lookups. Basically, you have a smartphone, you have a smart map. This is a smart map, this is a smartphone that can do smart map things. So you pretty much, this is ideal for navigation and very suboptimal for almost every other usage for an electronic on your motorcycle trip. And kind of the final sort of disadvantage or downside of these things is they are actually pretty expensive. So this is 120 bucks, and navigates pretty good, nearly as well as this one does. And I like it for certain use cases. This one specifically is $285, I think, on Amazon. I'll show it up here, right? And that's quite a bit more for a smart map, right? And you don't have, most of them don't have subscription plans or anything like that, but a lot of times if you want to buy a new map, you're also into buying maps just like you would be on your phone with your GPS unit. So they are a more expensive option than even just a dedicated, direction phone. This is a smartphone that does GPS things. This is a GPS, right? All right, let's figure out how to do this, and we'll talk about what setup is really right for you. So it really breaks down to your budget and your use case. So if you're limited on budget, very limited on budget, just use your phone. Like, they have decent navigation apps for any OS, and you already have a charging system. You can just get yourself a mount, put your phone up there, charge it at night, you're good to go. You should be able to navigate pretty much anywhere you want to, and you don't have to bring any extra crap. Now, if you have the budget for a dedicated GPS, like some navigation system above and beyond just your personal cell phone, let's say you want to keep your personal cell phone in your pocket for protection or what have you, but you do want to have a separate thing up and available so you can see directions or whatever. If you're around town or you're taking long road trips and you really want more of a turn-by-turn setup, just either use your cell phone again or buy yourself a dedicated GPS phone, navigation phone, because turn-by-turn in the city, these dedicated GPSs specifically designed for GPS navigation off-road in the wilderness, they're not great at turn-by-turn. Some of them are, but those ones stay wired to your bike, where a dedicated GPS phone can come off and be a second Wi-Fi phone, or a phone that you use for entertainment on a plane or whatever have you. It is a phone that you use the GPS for. If you're going off-road, you're taking actual adventure trips, and you can only have one device, outside of your personal cell phone, I would suggest a dedicated GPS unit. Yes, it's more expensive. In fact, it's more than double the price of a phone. So this is where budget kind of comes into it a little bit. But if your budget doesn't allow you to spend $200 to $300 on a GPS unit, then honestly, you should just use a phone again. But if you have the budget and you can only have one, then I would suggest a dedicated GPS unit. Its usability is just nicer. It has redundant power systems, so you can charge it off your bike, you can charge it, you can use batteries that you're probably carrying on you anyway, that sort of thing. So I like the usability, the durability, and the redundancy that you find in a dedicated GPS unit like this hiking Garmin 64 SX versus a regular cell phone. However, I generally don't suggest the more expensive ones. They're really good. The Zumo 395 or whatever, which is the kind of turn-by-turn, basically your in-car GPS navigation, just put it on your dash on a motorcycle. It's really good, really great for turn-by-turn. Your Montanas, your Garmin Montanas, are that sign of really big screens. They have great, nice big screens, but I've found in the types of trips that I like to take, I'm never really limited on screen size. I usually get onto a trail or a road and ride it till an intersection, and I check which way I'm supposed to go on the intersection, and then I go off again and take the next segment of that trail. You don't need a big screen to do that. You can do that on a very small screen and just check it at the intersection and then go. And the Montana is $500 or $600, whatever it is right now. It's significantly more expensive. I don't really think it gets you the usability boost over something like the GPSMAP 64. So really, for my money, for a just sole dedicated GPS, I would rather have one of these Garmin GPS 64s, 55s or 57s. There's a couple of them out there. I'd rather have one of those than one of the more expensive Montanas. Now, what if you're a gear whore? What if you're, prepper is not the right term, but what if you're paranoid about stuff breaking? Get them all, actually. So I tend to be a little bit of a gear whore. I like my stuff. I like my stuff to look cool. So, oh, come on. Oh, there's another set. That's why it's not coming off. You have to have all the stuff. Honestly, I think the best setup, personally, for navigation is a split between the two. So I like having actually both of them on my handlebars, and I'll tell you why. This was something I saw for a guy who was doing like an off-road endurance race, something like your Baja 1000s or whatever. Those guys, if you're doing an off-road race and you want a GPS track, those guys usually run two GPS trackers. One of those is going to be zoomed out. You can see the route or a large section of the route. You can see large landmarks around them. One of them zoomed way in, so when you come to an intersection, you don't have to spend nearly as much time tracking where you are and where you're supposed to go. And you just, okay, so I come to an intersection, track goes off that way, okay, I want to take that road, off we go, right? And I really liked that when I was taking my trip, is, hey, I like having the phone on a wide area, because then I can see like, okay, here's mountains, here's might be something I want to go see and go look at over here, take some pictures. But I liked having the Garmin on the close view, so that I could see, okay, I'm coming up to this intersection, or I'm coming up to this road, which way do I need to turn? And the Garmin with that slightly easier viewing angles was a lot nicer to have for that. So if it were me, I would have a dedicated GPS handheld unit like this for close-in stuff, and a phone sitting on the handlebars with more of a wide angle view, so that I can just see the general picture going on around me. God, there's another one. Jeez. That worked. So that's it If you're on a budget, use a cell phone. Use your own cell phone. Don't pay for an extra one. If you're got the budget for one unit to go GPSing, if you're doing road stuff, buy yourself a dedicated GPS cell phone that you're not worried about losing, and that does pretty much all the turn-by-turn stuff you want. If you're going off-road, get yourself a dedicated off-road Garmin-style GPS unit. If you're baller, go ahead and get them both, because they actually do have a use together that I find beneficial on your ride. So anyway, we got this off. Now that we can check out the rest of this structure in here, see what we really wanted to hear for some other projects down the road. So thanks for watching, guys. My name's Andrew, so Make It Break YouTube channel. Like, comment, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff, and till next time, guys, I'll catch you later.